Okay. We are looking at Bickley's Thunder Egg by Bert Rhoads and chapter 13. The Thunder Egg is cut. Since Thanksgiving break had already begun, the boys were free to go along to Marshalltown. Even Mother decided to go. With Red Hog Smith, when Red Hog Smith came to pick them up in his bobsled, they were all ready. At 11 o'clock, the whole Ross family stood talking to Red Hog Smith and Ralph, the soldier in the stonecutter's shop. The man who owned the little shop had a fine collection of polished stones. Now he stood behind his wooden counter and studied the thunder egg before him. It's unusually heavy, he said, looking it over. Must have a solid core of agate. Have you seen others as heavy as this one? John asked. Oh, yes. If the agate core comes close to the outer shell of the thunder egg, it would be quite heavy. John and Ralph looked at each other. Bickley stood, scarcely breathing. Mother's lips were pressed tight together, and there was a bright look in her eyes. Tommy looked from one face to another, although he was afraid to miss a single word. Red Hog stood looking at the thunder egg. He turned to Mother. I swore, and if I didn't think Hank might try to break into your place last night to look for the stone, he was that mad. Well, the lock on our kitchen door was pulled loose this morning, John said, but I thought one of the boys had did it. Then Hank Collin came in. He limped a little from his sore toe, but he greeted them all with a hearty good morning. Well, why do we have to wait? He said, looking around to the others. Let's get this here stone cut. You will pay, of course. He looked at Ralph. Yes, Mr. Collins, I will pay for having this stone sawed in half. There'll be $1. That would be $1.50. Ralph motioned to the stonecutter. When this gentleman cuts the stone and tells us his value, we'll settle up right here. The owner of the shop placed the stone in the cutting position, and the saw began to make a groove in it. There was lots and lots of noise with the grinding of the teeth as they bit into the thunder egg, and nobody talked. Everybody was intent on the stone. It's taking longer than usual, the man said, pouring more water on the cutting edge of the saw. It's harder than I thought. And then he went back to the saw. It was hard work. When the two severed halves fell apart, a sigh went up from all who watched. Where was the gold? Where was the money? Bickley wasn't sure he had expected. Pardon me. Bickley wasn't sure that he had expected some fabulous wealth to be hidden inside the stone. It looked very ordinary now, laid with its two halves side by side on the wooden counter. Ralph looked at John, and John looked at Mother. Tommy opened his mouth, but Bickley clapped his hand over Tommy's mouth. He was afraid Tommy might blurt out that they had talked about the thunder egg and Hank Collins would hear it. Well, it's an unusually fine specimen, the man told them. It should polish beautifully, but of course it'll take several days. He wiped the sweat from his face and his jacket sleeve. What value would you set on this stone as it sits right now? Ralph asked. Oh, I should say each half is worth at least $4.50. The man picked up one of the cut pieces and examined it carefully. One can't say for certain, of course, until they're polished, but I'd say that's a fair estimate. Ralph pulled out his wallet. He counted $1.50 and paid for the cutting of the stone. Then he counted out $7.50 and handed it to Hank. I'd like a receipt for that, Mr. Collins, he said, and I'd like a receipt to say the amount was deducted from what this Mrs. Ross owes you. Hank took a scrap of wrapping paper from his pocket and wrote the receipt in a cramped, tight hand. When Hank was gone, they stepped outside the stone. Bickley held one half of the thunder egg, and Tommy held the other. Ralph looked down at Bickley. I think you should have something pretty nice there. Later, when you can afford to get them polished, you'll get lots of pleasure out of looking at them. And you'll remember your Uncle Dirk. He buttoned up his blue coat. You may pay me back the $9 when you're able. Red Hog Smith left them and walked down in the direction of the general store. Well, John said with a deep sigh, this puts us right back where we started, doesn't it? Ralph stood scratching his head. I'm sure I was mistaken what Durkheim said to me. He said find the stone. Or surely he wouldn't have worried about the value of this thunder egg and made it the subject of his last wish, Mother said. I don't think so either, Mrs. Ross, Ralph said, looking troubled. There must be some other stone. We'll have to go look for some more. We'll have to dig up all over the cellar floor. Perhaps there's another stone there. Come out tomorrow, then, John said, as they parted in front of the stonecutter's shop in Marshalltown. They all followed Red Hog down to the general store and spent an hour or so enjoying the delectable smells and wonderful sights. Mother even bought a wooden pail of jelly and some candy for the boys. It was altogether a glorious day. The snow lay in 2.5 feet on the level, and more fell that night. But the following morning dawned bright and sunny. Bickie and Tom dressed in their warmest things. It was the day before Thanksgiving, and they hurried to help John clear away the snow from the cellar floor. Bickie even brought Mom's kitchen broom to sweep it clean. By the time Ralph had come, they were ready to start digging. Mother heated some water in the big wash boiler and filled the top of the stove with more kettles of water. She filled the reservoir on the side of the stove. This hot water may help us thaw out the frozen ground, she told the boys. The soil under the cellar floor was not frozen as deep as the surface of the ground. They poured the boiling water along one side and were soon able to get through 3-4 inches of frozen dirt. After that, it went rather well. They could get their shovels underneath the frozen crust. It was muddy, dirty work, and Bickie and Tommy sat on the stone wall and watched. The men threw spadeful against the wall behind them. The area was not more than 20 feet, and the men started digging steadily, soon got to the middle. There were no stones at all. There was nothing. The men stopped to rest. It's no use, John said. There's nothing here, I'm sure. Well, we've started. Let's finish. It won't take long. Ralph threw a spadeful of muddy dirt back against the wall. Bickie saw a black thing drop against the red sandstone. It looked like a limp body of a rat or a mole or some other small creature. He climbed down and went to look at it. He picked it up. It was a small leather bag, blackened from the mud and the water, soggy and wet. It was tied with a thong of dirty black leather. It looked like the leather shoelace string. The thing felt heavy in his hand, and it was getting his mitten dirty. Look, he said, holding up the leather bag for all of them to see. What's this? John and Ralph looked up. They stopped digging. They came over to where Bickie stood. Tommy climbed down from the wall, and Ralph took the wet pouch in his hand. He got out his pocket knife and slit the leather string that held it tied it shut. The boys stood watching him, almost in unbearable suspense, and then Ralph put a knife back in his pocket. I think before we see what's in the bag, we should take it in the house and let your mother have a look at it. I feel pretty sure this is what we're looking for, and it belongs to her. Suddenly, and with wildly beating hearts, Bickie followed the others into the house, and heard as in a dream, while Ralph explained to Mother what they had done and how Bickie had seen the black object thrown against the wall. If this Bick had kept his eyes open, we should have never discovered it, Ralph said, as he turned the bag upside down and spilled the contents on the kitchen table. No one spoke for a minute. Dozens of small nuggets and some larger ones sprawled across the top of the tabletop. Pure gold. The old Seth cloth looked down, and Bickie heard its loud ticking pounding against the quietness of the room. Mother, Tommy spoke first. What are they? Are they stones? No, Tom, Ralph said, as he laid a hand on his shoulder. This is gold. This is raw gold from California. It is in the nuggets, just like the miners found it in the sand and in the streams there. Is this what Uncle Dirk meant? Bickie felt the quiet churning inside. Pretty sure it is, Ralph said. It must have been buried there right beneath the thunder egg, John spoke up. That's why he told you to find the stone. They looked at the gold for quite some time, and then Mother, she still had not said a word. Finally, she asked in a low voice, What's its value? What do you estimate? She looked at Ralph. I say there's between $1,500 and $200,000 here. $2,000 here, Ralph told her. I have had some experience with these things. We can build our house again. She drew a deep breath and reached down to draw the little boys to her arms. We could pay off Hank Collins, John added. We could buy seed corn and seed potatoes, Bickie remembered. We could have jelly every day, and pumpkin pie, and beef stew, Tommy sang in a joyous voice. And what can we do for you, our good friend? Mother held out her hand to Rolf. Without you, this would have never come to us. Let me come visit you once the new house is built. Let me eat and sleep for a day or two here, and let me see the two halves of the thunder egg all polished and sitting in the boys' room. He laughed and slapped John on the back. The nuggets were weighed and sold. Their values were a little more than what Ralph had figured. John had secured the mortgage money and put it in Hank Collins' hand, not forgetting to ask for a proper receipt. And the day came when the boys brought home the polished halves of the thunder egg. A beautiful sign appeared on the glassy surface of the agate. It looks like white wings over green water, Tommy said. It looks like lots and lots of angels, Bickley told Mother. Yes, it does. She looked long at the lovely stones. We will keep these where we can always see them. They will remind us of God's wings of mercy over us in all our troubles. The neighbors came to help build the new house on the old sandstone foundation. It looked a great deal like the house that burnt. Two little green windows looked out under the gable, and when springtime came, the yellow rose vine climbed over a new porch. The end.